There's a moment many people recognize, even if they don't talk about it. You catch your reflection slightly side on, or you sit down and notice how your waistband feels different than it used to. Not dramatically tighter, just different. Softer in some places, firmer in others. And it can feel confusing, especially if your habits haven't changed all that much. So what actually is that stubborn belly fat? If it helps, imagine your body like a well-run household that's been managing energy for decades. Early on, it's flexible. It spends freely, stores lightly, adjusts quickly. But over time, it becomes more cautious, more strategic. It starts holding on to resources a little more tightly, just in case. That resource in this case is energy, stored as fat. And the area around the abdomen becomes one of its preferred storage sites, particularly as we get older. There are a few layers to this. First, there's subcutaneous fat, which simply means fat stored just under the skin. This is the softer layer you can pinch. Then there's visceral fat, which sits deeper, surrounding organs within the abdomen. This type is more metabolically active, meaning it interacts more with hormones and internal signals. As the body ages, there's often a gradual shift in how and where fat is stored, with a tendency to accumulate more centrally, around the midsection. But this isn't random. Hormones play a significant role here. Hormones are chemical messengers that tell the body how to use and store energy. As we age, levels of certain hormones, like estrogen, testosterone, and growth hormone, naturally decline. These changes influence how the body distributes fat. For example, lower estrogen levels are associated with increased abdominal fat storage, not because the body is malfunctioning, but because it's adapting to a different hormonal environment. At the same time, insulin, the hormone that helps regulate blood sugar, can become less sensitive. This is called insulin resistance, which simply means the body needs more insulin to manage the same amount of glucose. When this happens, the body is more likely to store energy rather than use it immediately. So even if eating habits haven't changed dramatically, the internal processing of that energy can shift. Another layer involves muscle. Muscle tissue is metabolically active, meaning it uses energy even at rest. Over time, there's a natural decline in muscle mass, known as sarcopenia. Less muscle means slightly lower energy usage overall, which can contribute to gradual fat accumulation, particularly in the abdominal area. And then there's cortisol. Cortisol is often referred to as a stress hormone, but it's more accurate to think of it as a regulator of energy availability. It helps the body respond to demands. However, when cortisol levels remain elevated for long periods due to stress, disrupted sleep, or ongoing strain, it can influence fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. This isn't the body working against you. It's the body trying to ensure there's a readily available energy reserve in times it perceives as uncertain. If you go back to that household analogy, it's like stocking the pantry a little more than necessary, just in case. Also, something interesting about how fat tissue itself behaves. Fat isn't just passive storage, it's biologically active. It releases signaling molecules, sometimes called adipokines, which communicate with other systems in the body. This means fat tissue can influence inflammation, metabolism, and even appetite regulation. So when abdominal fat increases, it's not just a change in appearance. It reflects a broader shift in how the body is managing energy and communication internally. There's a common misconception that this type of fat is simply the result of eating too much or moving too little. While those factors do play a role, they're only part of a much larger picture. Hormonal changes, muscle composition, sleep patterns, stress levels, and even how the body perceives safety and energy availability all contribute. That's why it can feel stubborn. It's not just about willpower or discipline. It's about biology adapting over time. Have you ever noticed how weight tends to settle differently compared to earlier years, or how the same habits that once maintained balance don't seem to have the same effect. That's not a lack of effort. It's a shift in how the body responds. And within that shift, there's also a protective element. Abdominal fat, particularly visceral fat, acts as an energy reserve that can be mobilized when needed. It's part of the body's way of ensuring survival during periods of reduced intake or increased demand. It also plays a role in cushioning internal organs. So while it can feel frustrating, it's not without purpose. It's the body prioritizing stability. Certain everyday patterns can influence how this system behaves, not by forcing change, but by working with the body's natural tendencies. Regular, gentle movement supports how the body uses energy throughout the day. Not necessarily intense or exhausting, but consistent enough to signal that energy is being used and doesn't need to be stored as readily. Muscle engagement, whether through daily activity or simple strength-based movements, can help maintain muscle tissue, which subtly shifts how energy is managed. Sleep plays a surprisingly large role as well. When sleep is disrupted, hormones related to hunger and energy storage can become less balanced, often encouraging the body to hold onto energy more tightly. Even the pace of eating can matter. Slower, more mindful eating allows the body's internal signals, like fullness and satisfaction, to register more clearly, which can influence how much energy is stored. There are also traditional approaches, like gentle walking after meals or incorporating warm, nourishing foods, that align with how the body naturally processes energy. Not as a rule, but as a rhythm. And then there's stress. Not just obvious stress, but the quieter kind, the ongoing background tension that the body registers even when the mind is busy elsewhere. Creating small moments of calm, whether through breathing, rest, or simply pausing, can influence how the body perceives its environment. Because ultimately, the body is always asking a simple question: is it safe to use energy, or should I store it? And its answer shapes what happens next. So that area around the abdomen, the place that feels most stubborn, isn't random. It's a reflection of multiple systems interacting over time. Hormones, muscles, metabolism, environment, and experience all contributing to a pattern. And when you begin to see it as a pattern rather than a problem, it can feel a little less frustrating. Because beneath it all, your body isn't working against you. It's responding, adjusting, trying to maintain balance in a way that reflects where you are now, not where you were before. And in that quiet, ongoing process, there's a kind of logic to it. Not always obvious, not always convenient, but there, nonetheless. Here are 5 lesser-known science-backed ways that can influence how the body stores and uses fat around the abdomen, focusing on underlying physiology rather than obvious advice. 1. Eating earlier in the day, circadian alignment. Your body follows a circadian rhythm, an internal clock that affects metabolism. Earlier in the day, insulin sensitivity is typically higher, meaning your body is better at using energy rather than storing it. Eating more of your food earlier rather than late at night can shift how energy is handled internally. 2. Improving deep sleep quality, slow wave sleep. During deep sleep, the body regulates hormones like growth hormone and cortisol. Growth hormone supports fat metabolism, while poor sleep can elevate cortisol, which is linked to increased abdominal fat storage. It's not just sleep duration, it's the depth and quality that matters. 3. Building muscle through small, frequent activation. You don't need long workouts to influence metabolism. Brief, repeated muscle activation throughout the day increases something called glucose uptake, where muscles pull sugar from the bloodstream to use as energy. This reduces the likelihood of that energy being stored as fat, particularly around the abdomen. 4. Reducing chronic low-level stress signals. Even subtle, ongoing stress can keep cortisol slightly elevated. Over time, this can influence fat distribution toward the abdominal area. calm, repetitive activities like walking, breathing slowly, or quiet routines can shift the nervous system toward a state where energy is less likely to be stored. 5. Supporting gut health and microbiome balance. The gut microbiome, trillions of bacteria in your digestive system, plays a role in how calories are extracted and how fat is stored. A more diverse microbiome is associated with better metabolic flexibility, meaning the body can switch between using and storing energy more efficiently. A useful way to think about it, abdominal fat is less about one single cause and more about how timing, hormones, muscle activity, and internal balance all interact over time. I hope this has helped. Please like and subscribe so I can continue to help you guys. Take care.